Hello, Stephanie here. I have seen a lot of cover designers post artwork for people to use on their interior. And although they are beautiful, one of the problems is a lot of times these cover designers may not quite understand how books are on the interior. And so sometimes the artwork that they put up really kind of only could be used on one page. So the purpose of this video is to take a look at how an interior is set up and how we can design those pages, that artwork, to work properly for a book. So it's really not just one design that's going to work. You really need to think about multiple designs when you're offering these packages to authors. So, and also this video is for authors too, so you know what to ask for from an interior design, from someone who's going to do interior artwork for you. So to make my point, I am going to show you a couple of interiors and the different types of pages that went into these interiors. So this first example is for a paranormal romance book, and this is for a series. So we use the same images across the series. We just remove certain portions of the image and replace it with something different for each book. So the title page is just this kind of smoky design with some words overlaid and with some dancing feathers. And you'll notice that we do not have black pages on this. We also have this little ink drawing available. So for each book in the series, we change out this little ink drawing, but this particular design that is on this page stays the same. Then we come across, this is just, she has a quote in each of her books, so we do a similar design as we had on the title page, but we just make a couple of tweaks so we can have this all on using white text, so we overlay it on the black portion of the image. So we utilize the same kind of smoky, grungy swish across the page with the feathers and the type overlaid on it. But here you'll notice that we incorporate this this ink drawn owl and this ink drawn calla lily. And that's to represent the two characters that we have in this particular book. But notice that we only have our text overlaid on the dark portion since we use white text. Again, we use this little ink container for certain pages. And then we get into the heart of the book. And we have brought back this same kind of smoky, grungy effect with the text overlaid and the feathers dancing. And then this is kind of meant to represent like a scroll paper, and that's where we put our chapter title and the chapter name, which is our character. And then here is that calla lily on that piece of paper, and that represents our female character. And then we have the little ink for the seam breaks. We have the ink with feathers coming out of it. Okay. Now we have the same graphic, but it's only shown on one portion of the page. Okay, so for chapter 1, because chapter 1 is really a double page spread, because in most cases this left-hand page, opposite of where chapter 1 begins, is always going to be blank in most cases. If you have a prologue or some other matter, there is a chance that this page is not going to be blank. And so depending on the artwork, it may need to just be in, covering on one page. So if we scroll to chapter 2, our chapter 1 continues on this left-hand page. So we can't really have this artwork extend onto this page on page 6 right here, because it's going to prevent the text from being legible. Now, if we added a blank page to allow this one graphic to extend just like it is here, because of chapter 1 ends on a left-hand page, that means we'd have to add 2 blank pages, because this page right here would need to be blank. That is considered a bad book design, to have a blank right-hand page. So we don't want to do that. So we have to think about how can we tweak our artwork so that it doesn't extend onto this other page. So for this one, it was fairly easy. We just cut the artwork in half. Okay. And then, we need to think about, in some books, some authors are okay with chapters starting on only on a right-hand page, which means that some pages on the left-hand side will be blank, which is acceptable. Blank pages on a left-hand side are acceptable, but blank pages on a right-hand side are not. So some books choose for every chapter to start on the right-hand page, therefore creating those blank left-hand page. This particular author, she was trying to get her page count down, and this book, it was maybe 130,000 words, so it's a pretty hefty book, so she wanted to keep her page count down as much as possible and didn't want to do right-hand page, didn't want her chapters to start only on the right-hand page. So we do have those left-hand pages, so we have to think about how does that artwork interpret into that left-hand page. So I had to create a left-hand page version. And in some cases, it's going to be the same, but in some cases, you may need to flip a few things for it to make sense. Okay. And then the next type of chapter page on these is another character's version. So this is a dual POV book, and she has two characters, and so we wanted to do different chapter title pages for Rylan, and his kind of character is an owl. So we incorporated the owl where the calla lily was, and that's how we did this particular book. Okay. And then sometimes for this particular book, we did not do anything above the other titles, so acknowledgments and about the author did not have any special graphic on it. This What's Next, because it ties into the series, we used the little ink container. Okay. So that's one idea. Here is another book. This is kind of I guess it's a pirate book. I don't know exactly what the genre is, but it is a romance. And so this is our title page. We made sure we had some darker area on the title page to overlay the title and the author name on. So that's something that you definitely need to make sure that you have areas in your artwork to allow your title to go on. And it needs to be, you know, a significant amount of space for that title as well. If you have a lot, like we wouldn't be able to place the title over the characters or over the boat with the clouds because there's just too many different levels of gray. But for this one, we just kind of went with a black brush and just added some opaque, also some kind of clouds that have some slight transparency to it, so you can still see the background through it a little bit, but it makes the text extremely legible. So here is, you know, the image for the chapter title page, and then for the, I'm sorry, this is the title page, and here is what a chapter title page would look like. You'll notice it's the same artwork, but it is different because we did not want to do black pages in this one, so we went with just smoking out the this portion of the image. So we just created that kind of smoky effect to allow our text to stand out. So you don't want a lot of busyness behind the text because it's going to make it hard to read. So if you can, you know, kind of do some sort of effect, as you know, I think I went in with a smoke brush and put a layer mask on the artwork and kind of smoked it out. So, and there's very little color behind the text. There's a couple of swooshes, but it's a very light gray, so it makes the text very easy to read. And then we just went with a simple graphic for the scene breaks. And this prologue ends on a right-hand page, and then we have a part page, and your part pages should always be on a right-hand page. So we were able to just kind of mimic the title page and just put our part number and part title in white on top of the image, just like we did for the title page. And then we reused the same artwork that we did for the prologue for when the chapter pages start. Now you'll notice up here there are some variations, but because this black text does stand out, it's pretty readable for this part. Now we would not want any of this text to be up in this area because we really want it to be readable. So, you know, you got to think about where are you going to place the text on the image. Now, going back to left versus right, she didn't want the blank pages, so we opted for a completely different graphic on the remaining chapters. So chapter 1 had that full image with the boat and the couple, but moving forward for the other chapters, we just did a nice little graphic in the corner of each page with the boat. Okay, so we just alternated that on each boat. So these are the type of things that you need to think about with the graphics. If you do just one big graphic, you got to think where the text is going to go, and for those pages that have the text flowing to the next page, you got to think about how is that going to overlay, how is the text going to overlay on that graphic. So my next example will kind of incorporate that texture behind the text, and I'm going to show you that. This is a fantasy book, and so this is what our chapter title page, our title page looks like. And we did the title in white, and this area where the title is above is really dark, so that white text really stands out. Then we're going to go into our chapters, and this book, I think I had like 3 or 4 maybe different versions of this background. So I'm going to show you why I did 3 or 4 different versions of this background. So for this is fine. We can use that main image. Where the text sets is really dark, so we don't really need to worry about that. And then we get into chapter 1, and you will notice that our prologue continues on this page, and we kept it black with white text. So if we had used this image right here and we had our text overlaid, because there's a lot of variations in the levels of this grayscale, it would have been very difficult to have the text be readable. So we did add some darkening to this image, created another image, and then we added some, just, went with a black transparent brush, probably with like a 20% opacity or something, and just kind of added a hazy effect to that image in this area to allow our text to stand out. So that's something that you have to think about. Now, as we scroll through this book, and then for the chapter ornaments for the scene breaks, we just went with the wolf, a little icon for the wolf. Now this page has even more text on this left-hand page where chapter 2 starts. So we had to actually go in and add even more levels of darkness to this page in order for this text to stand out. So when I said I did several different images, that is why. See if we can see something different. No, this is still the dark. In other versions of this book, I had where this page, like I had a page where just this top portion was darkened, and then I had one where it was a half a page that was darkened, and then one where the whole page was darkened. So I did that in order for that text to stand out. All right, so if you do a lot of these types of artwork for these different books, I highly recommend thinking in terms of, how you want the graphics to look on each of those types of pages, and making sure that your artwork will allow text to be overlaid in pretty much all these different areas. So think about that. And you also, with authors, they need to think about, are they going to have their chapters start on either the left hand or the right hand page, or only a right hand page. Chapter 1 should always start on a right hand page. It's considered bad book design if it doesn't start on a right hand page. As well as your part pages, and the chapters following a part page should start on a right-hand page. But any other chapters can start either left or right. For this particular book, we had all chapters start on a right-hand page, and so we are able to use the image that doesn't have any blackened areas for this page when the previous chapter ends on a right-hand page. I know it's kind of confusing, but sometimes it's important to look at a book and how it is laid out, where the chapters fall and where the chapters end. So those are the things that you need to think about when building artwork. Now, also too, I've been doing interior design for books, 13, 14 years now. And so it's really important to think about these things. Also, it's really important to know how things print, because what happens a lot of times with graphics, they print a lot darker than they look on your screen. So a lot of times you're going to need to tweak the levels and lighten images. And I have a book available. I have 2 versions of this book. There is a KDP version and there's an Ingram Spark version. The Ingram Spark version is not available to purchase anywhere online. If you want an Ingram Spark version, just contact me directly. I think I have a price of $18 for the books, for each book. But this is a guide. This is something because I had been doing interior book design for so long, I really wanted kind of a guide to see how fonts print and how different graphics print, and how text prints on a dark background, and how white text prints on a dark background, and how different levels of opacity backgrounds, and how that the font, the type stands out. So this book is a good guide. You can go to Amazon and look for Stephanie Anderson, but How Does It Print? And it'll give you, I'm going to quickly skim through it for you so you can see, but it will show you the different levels of grayscale and how different text prints on top of that grayscale. And then also this guide will show you how different fonts print. You can think that a font looks great online in a PDF version on your screen, and then when you actually see it printed, it looks a little different. So this guide is a great guide to show you how those different fonts actually look in print. One of the biggest fonts, Bookmania, is a great font that is actually available as an Adobe font. If you have Creative Cloud, you can activate that font and use it for books. And it's a great font, but the thing is, it doesn't look that great on screen, in my opinion, but it looks fabulous printed. So, you know, you may think it looks good on screen, but it really changes something when you see it printed in an actual book. So this book is about over 300 pages, and it's set up in a couple of different chapters. We just have some basic formatting rules, and part 2 is about shades and opacity levels. Part 3 just has sample fonts and layouts. Part 4 just has a ton of different graphics and how they print. I show you some that I had to tweak the levels of to make them print better. And then part 5 just has a whole bunch of text showing different fonts, different font sizes with different line spacing. So I'm going to quickly pass through some of these. These are just our formatting basics. I'm not going to go over that. And then the shades and opacity levels, this is going to show you what, this is 100% black, 90%, 80%, and so on, all the way to 10%, and what white text looks against that that level of black on these boxes. So, you know, you would never want to use 10% black with white text because it's just really not readable. And if you look at the actual print book, it's, you know, it's pretty not readable. And you will also see with this type of printing that KDP and Ingram Spark uses, basically it's not high quality printing. It's basically like a copier. And so you'll see kind of the variations in the grain that is in the different shades. Okay, so it's important to see that to kind of see the quality. And then the next page we have black text on the different varying levels of grayscale on the boxes. And then I get into some text just to show how those different levels print. So this is 100%. And if you see the print book, you'll see that you can't even see this texture hardly at all behind this. So in all honesty, I really need to go in and adjust the levels to make the white areas pop out a little bit more, because it does print a little dark with, I'm looking at the Ingram Spark sample off screen. So it does print a little dark, so I probably would lighten that. And then here is what white text looks against a background that has 100% opacity. And this is okay. This text in the actual printed version is still readable, and even though we have some varying colors here, it is still very readable. But the further you get into these, this is 90% opacity on the background, 80% opacity, and then 70% opacity. And this is where it starts in the print book. It starts becoming a little hard to read, where areas of the lighter areas, the lighter value areas in the print book, it becomes harder to read that white text. Okay. So then we switch at about 60% opacity. I start showing you what black text looks like, and you would never want it to set 60% opacity with black text because it's very difficult to read, and you would see that in the sample book. 50% white opacity with a white text is pretty hard to read as well. And so these mid values with a 50% opacity, you just really don't want to use those for your book. And that's why the sample book is great, because it really shows you that. Now, at 30% opacity with the black text, it starts to become more readable. So you would be okay to set something to like a 30% opacity with black text. And then, of course, this is definitely readable in the print version all the way up to the 10% opacity, which is very readable. And then the rest of the book, in part 3, we have a bunch of sample fonts and layouts. And in the book, I tell you what font it is and what font size and what the leading is. And I also provide different graphics, like this is a photo, and I tell you where I got it from, so this is Deposit Photos. And you'll see varying pages. The varying pages have various fonts, like this is Athleus font, which is a good book font, and then this is your classic Garamond. And then here's some ink drawings that are in public domain. And then I get into several different layout ideas. And you can see we'll have black text or white text overlay depending on the background. So it just gives you an idea of how things print and how dark you can really go. I also have this, you can buy the book, and then there's also where you can view the book online. So you can see how the book looks versus your screen and how it looks printed. So you can see in most cases everything's going to print darker than the way it looks on screen. Okay. So I just have a ton of different ideas on sample layouts and how you could incorporate them into graphics for the print interiors. Okay, and then towards the back, we'll scroll through all of it. I have a million samples in here. That's why it's 300 pages. Then towards the back, we have a bunch of, let's keep on going. I have a bunch of different graphics, and I will show, they're in black and white in the thing, like this says straight from Daz, and then this page on the right is updated where I have gone in and done a curves adjustment and or a levels adjustment, so they turn out a little brighter so you can see the difference between those. So just a bunch of different graphics and how they print, and again, they're all in black and white, not in color. One day I'm going to do a sample book in color. But for now, I just have it in black and white. And then here's the back. This is part 5, and this is where we just have a paragraph in different fonts with different point sizes and different leading. So these first 3 pages are Athelis. I don't even know how to say that. Athelis maybe? 12 point, 11 point, 10 point. And then the next page is the same, but it has, the first page has 16-point line spacing, and then the next paragraph has 15-point line spacing followed by 14-point line spacing. So you can see how each different font looks at that point size and at that line spacing. So that's the book, so feel free to look it up. So the biggest thing to know about doing graphics for the interior is think about the different pages that you need them done. So first off, the title page. I always like having really decorative title pages. So, you know, creating artwork for that, just make sure you allow an area, kind of a blank area, sorry, allow a blank area for your text to pop out, whether your text is white or whether your text is black. And then you're going to have a chapter title page, and think about chapter 1. It can typically be a 2-page spread. And then your other chapters, depending on how it's laid out, you may only want a single-page graphic, or you may want a 2-page spread, but you need to keep in mind that you may have text on that left-hand page. So when you're doing graphics, it's important for interior, it's important to think about those things. As far as sizing, your graphics really need to be sized to whatever the book size is, because the aspect ratio of the various sizes vary. 6:9 is not the same as 5:8. The aspect ratio is completely different. So I typically size everything to 6:9, and then when I create things, but once I know the actual trim size that the client needs, I will size it down accordingly to what they need. So those are the things to keep in mind if you are creating graphics for interior book design.